So these are the various things one can understand. Suppose you want to excite a tall chimney, which I will try to show you. One can use a small rocket and then you can fire it from there. So it start oscillating there. Okay, you can put an accelerometer and take it there. Okay, so this is the reason wherein you will be able to find out some of the applications for the purpose of various applications. One can see it. Okay, so eccentric masses also can be typically used for the application purpose, and you can also observe some of the practical situations wherein you can use these situations where you want to excite a bigger structure. One can do that. Okay, so let us try to understand in more detail. Okay, so this is one of the applications in the industrial thing. Okay, I'll just load the internet 1 second, just be online.
Sir, you switch on your mic, sir. Audio is not clear. You unmute your. Yeah.
Okay, now it is fine. Hello, now it is fine, right?
Sir, yes, sir. Now it is clear, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, so now let us go to one of the important application in the power plant, where you have all this condition health monitoring, rotary systems, etc. So you can try to look at one of the power plant in India, wherein this stool structure is the one wherein you have all the accessories to drive this column pipe, which will in turn send this water to the generator for the cooling. Okay, and then it is driven by a motor in the top, and this is the spool structure, and this is what you are seeing, this trapezoidal thing with the part. This is the portion above the ground. So below this you have this is a 40 centimeter thick RCC slab. Below that you have a big pond, like a water sump, which is connected to the directly to the sea. It gets the water here, and then this column pipe will take the water and then send it to the cooling purpose. And you have a motor here which will churn this impeller at the base, and it goes to this way. Okay, so what you are seeing here is this is the motor assembly, that is roughly this is part B I will put. So this is the part B. Okay, so this is the part B here, and then this is the part C here. Part C here. Okay, this is the part whichever is there here, stool structure. Okay, so idea here is, whenever it is operating at something like 720 RPM. Okay, so we can just see that there are a lot of resonance and vibration problems. We are supposed to find out the, what are the reasons why it is doing that lot of vibration, and then try to control that. So for that purpose, we did a in situ measurement using these accelerometers and frequency analyzer data ecosystem, as you see here, and try to find out the performance of these accelerometers and the natural frequency of this cooling water pump. As you see here, the excitation frequency was around 8.2 hertz, and we have shifted the natural frequency to 11.25 hertz, so that there is no resonance problem as such. So see, impulse excitation is good for small structures, but the structure like this, which is around 6 to 8 tons, what typically it is done is there are two things. One is we use the word like coast down. Okay, so we use the word like coast down, and then here, okay, coast down, COAST, coast down. So you take the motor RPM up to something like 800, and you switch off the thing there. So then what happens is, so as the motor, RPM keeps on coming down, so you put a various accelerometers at various points and then try to pick the signals. And whichever the subsystem is under the resonance, will try to show large amplitude of vibration. So this is one of the practical way of finding out the system properties in the rotary systems. So it's called as coast down study. You take to the high speed and switch off the thing there. Any subsystem that is undergoing a resonance, it will show up the thing there, and from that particular RPM, you will be able to correlate which RPM is critical, and then how to mitigate that and how to overcome that one can find out. So, so one cannot do a forced vibration using the electrodynamic shaker for a rotary systems. The only thing in the industry it is done is the coast down study. So the existing motor or a generator itself can excite this rotary system by varying the speed and then switching off the thing there. So this is how the electrodynamic shaker principle works itself there. Okay, so this is one part of it. The second part is, so one can use the existing hooks to and then the crane girders, to assemble these things, that you can use as a pendulum just to hit the structure and try to find out this response, to find out the natural frequency of the system. Otherwise, you can take a small cantilever beam and do the lab, but such things cannot be expected in this large structures. So what we have done is you will be having a crane hooks. So we have used this crane hooks just to give a pulse like an impulse hammer, but impulse hammer has got a force transducer, but this doesn't have a force transducer, but it will be able to excite the amount of energy needed for the hook is quite good enough to excite the structure. So I'll just show you the video how it is trying to excite the system there. Now what you are seeing is that this is a motor system which is above the floor from that trapezoidal support on the top of this one. So you excite the structure with it. Now you can just see that. Okay, now it is pulse is given, and that pulse itself is used. Okay, both in X and Y direction. So now you can just see that again. So now it is in the flow direction, X direction, the natural frequency is found, and similarly in the Y direction also it will be found. And this amount of input energy necessary for all the heavy systems. A small impulse hammer in the lab may not suffice. So you should be more practical and proactive in the industrial applications there. Okay. So this how once you do the pulse, you will be able to get the response. Take the Fourier transform of that FFT using the FFT analyzer, and then you will be able to get that. So the signal comes from that, and then it goes to the charge amplifier, and it goes to the analyzer for the conversion there. So this is where the challenging thing in the rotary system is you have to find out the natural frequency of the rotary systems as well there. Now I will show you the force transducer, how exactly the force transducer is used, and how it is application there. So if you look at the electrodynamic shaker, so it is connected to the near the structure side, so that whatever the force you have applied, you will be able to measure it. And this is how the force transducer work. You have the piezo crystal here and you have a piezo crystal here. So force is equal to mass into acceleration. Okay, on this principle it works. So you have a sandwiched in the case of two discs are there and one patch is there. So whenever there is a force sandwiched the thing there, it will generate the charges, and those charges are converted into voltage. So another terminology you should note down is the impedance head. So what is the impedance head? It is the combination of the accelerometer and the force transducer in the same thing. This instrument is very, very useful, which I will tell you to find out the driving point of RF. It's the same, the instrument wherein the top portion is the force transducer and bottom portion is the accelerometer. So whenever you connect the thing there, two leads will come, and one will give the accelerometer, another will give the force. So this is how the major application of the impedance head is used. This is one of our launch vehicle. You can observe here. So we have a laser vibrometer connected to the tip there here. So you have a laser vibrometer. Non-contact type of accelerometer is also used to find out the deflection due to the wind. So here electrodynamic shaker is used, and then you have a signal generator and you have a power amplifier which drives the electrodynamic shaker. So to find out the dynamic characterization of this. So this how before putting into the wind tunnel, so we have to do the aeroelastic design and verification for that. So we were talking about the impulse excitation. Now we will go deep into the impulse hammer itself. How exactly the select the impulse hammer and how to find out the tip selection methodology, etc. So we will try to understand that one. So if you say the impulse hammer, so it has got a force transducer, which is a main important thing, and you have a tip here, okay, and you have an extra mass, and you have the connector there. Okay, so the force transducer is sandwiched between two bodies. One is the support, another the tip. So whenever there is a force, there is a reaction. Force is there, and you have a reaction. In between, the piezo crystal gets generated the charges. It will measure the force. Now the question here is, what are the types of tips? How to select it? See, a steel tip, it will be able to generate frequencies up to 2 kilohertz. If it is a plastic tip, it can go up to 1 kilohertz. If it is a rubber tip, it can go up to 200 hertz. So in other words, if I want to do the experiment on a, let us say, a rotary system of a power plant, I can use this steel tip. If I want to do a test on a mridangam, okay, I can use a rubber tip. Okay, so where you can find the natural frequency of the mridangam, which is very thin rubber or a thin skin on the ghatam. You have to find out the natural frequencies of the shell mode, etc. You can use soft rubber, etc. So this is how the tip things are changed, and from here the output it goes to the conditioning amplifier again. Okay, I will tell you why the conditioning amplifier is necessary, because the signal coming out of the force transducer has got a high impedance, and you have to reduce that to the measurable system, either the oscilloscope or a data equal system. You can use the conditioning amplifier. So typically, whenever you use a hammer, try to see that the energy doesn't get dropped by more than 20 dB. Okay, so otherwise the higher modes, the energy is not sufficient to excite. That's what you can just see here is one can observe here. Don't do the excitation too much, so because it not be able to excite the wing and the fuselage, etc. So it is better use an electrodynamic shaker at 4 electrodynamic shakers, one in the right wing, another in the left wing, in the front and the rear, because energy needed by the hammer is so high, so you may damage the the aircraft. That's why whenever you want to use it, so in this graph you can stop at some place. For example, if it is a steel, you stop here. If it is a plastic, you stop here. If it is a rubber, stop somewhere here. So all the things you can stop at the same dB thing there. Okay, somewhere here you can stop it. So don't go more than this frequency range. For example, in case of this rubber, in case of plastic, in case of steel. So beyond this, if you go there, you won't be having a energy sufficient to excite those modes of vibration. So this is the important thing one can note down there. Just to give one more, industrial application. This is one of the newspaper printing machine. So you can just see that we are trying to use this impulse hammer. This is called as the sledgehammer. This sledgehammer is used to find out the frequencies of this plate cylinder blanket. So how does it in the newspaper you read, it gets printed is you will be having a blanket cylinder, and you have a plate cylinder here. So blanket cylinder has got a ink on the pad, rubber, etc. there, and here the engraved material is stuck onto this plate cylinder. So whenever there is a rotation here, and the paper comes here and then gets printed there. So here there are some pulses. You can just see this we wanted to simulate using the impulse hammer, which is essentially due to the engraved this foil coming in the plate cylinder used to give these pulses. We wanted to simulate those conditions in this rotary system. So that's why this impulse hammer is used for that. So what is the application of impulse hammer? So as I told you, so impulse hammer can be used to find out the natural frequency, mode shapes, and damping by using this transfer function, FRF. Okay, so these FRFs, first mode, second mode, third mode, fourth mode, so one can find out the natural frequencies of the system. So the precaution that you should take out in case of impulse hammer is you should be very cautious not to give a double impact. See, observe here. So what exactly happens is, so whenever you are trying to use this impulse hammer, okay, so before you take out, the structure will bounce and hit it. So in the time domain, you will be having the two pulses. So this will corrupt your FRF. It has got the corruption here, and you see the frequency of excitation bandwidth also got affected. Whereas if it is a nice single pulse, so you will be able to get this input force vector. So whereas you have got a double hit means it is. So this one is not permitted. So whenever you do the experimentation, ensure that you use only signal that has got a single hit, single pulse. Don't use the one where you have got a multiple hits, and this comes by skill. You have to do with a care. Experimentation is an art, so you have to do accordingly there. Now coming to the transducers and the sensors and accelerometers, we will go in detail about the way in which various industrial situations we have used these sensors in terms of force transducer, accelerometers, and the piezo patches, etc. We'll try to see the characterization of that. So whenever you try to look at the transducers, etc., so they are typically in the form of accelerometers. So piezoelectric accelerometer has got a wide band of bandwidth from the the lower to the higher frequency range, as low as 0.1 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. We have a wide bandwidth. This is the one important application of these piezo sensors. And velocity sensors have got some limitations. Eddy current probes also have got some limitations, but eddy current probes, proximity probes are also important as far as the vibration of the rotary system is concerned, to find out the health of the system, etc. there. So, but piezoelectric accelerometers are more popular to measure the vibration, to measure the noise, pressure, everything there. So the reason is they are active materials, wherein if there is a mechanical deformation, so it will generate the voltage. Suppose there is a mechanical deformation, it will just try to give you a strain, and then in terms it gives you the voltage. Okay, charges and voltage. Okay, whereas in case of strain gauge, the strain gauge it needs an excitation voltage, 5 volts plus or minus. So that becomes a difficult situation. Whereas in the case of accelerometers, piezoelectric, they are active materials. Any mechanical deformation will generate the strain and the voltage. Okay, so that's how it is more better to use these accelerometers. Coming to the construction of the accelerometer, if you look at it, you have a a compression type, and you have a shear type, and you have a ortho shear type, different ones. So the one whatever you have seen earlier, if there is a mechanical deformation, compression, it generates the voltage with a strain. Okay, so whereas in case of delta shear, you have got again the surface area is increased because of the shear across the surface, you will get a more. So what is the major classification difference between these delta shear and compression accelerometer is this delta shear one has got a high sensitivity. Okay, they have got a higher sensitivity compared to the compression type because of the piezo crystal size. It is better, and then the area in which the deformation occurs is much higher in the delta shear type accelerometers. Always compression accelerometers are used uniaxially, but these are all high sensitivity accelerometers used for wherever you need a low frequency and high sensitivity there. And velocity pickups also, as you see, that frequency range of interest is also lesser. But once you use the accelerometer, you can also use these velocity pickups for that purpose. And in the rotary systems, when especially in condition structure health monitoring, suppose I say I have a shaft which is having a whirling. Let us say if I want to find the whirling of shaft. So it can the amplitude and phase, okay, the 1, 2, and the amplitude of vibration A1 and A2 at these locations 1 and 2 can be correlated to find out whether a shaft. Okay, let me draw a shaft here. So whether the shaft is there, whether it is doing any wobbling. Okay, so we have one more gear housing here. Okay, so you can see whether this shaft across the thing trying to wobble out of plane vibration there, and this will be easily captured by this proximity probes. Okay, so the whirling of shafts will be easily found from this eddy current proximity probes. So I was telling you about the selection of the accelerometers. So you try to observe here the weight 0.5 to 0.3 grams. Okay, so here is the weight is 10 to 50 grams, and still higher ones, as I told you, up to 500 grams. Okay. So here 0.1 to 0.3 picocoulomb per meter per second, right? This is 1 to 10 picocoulomb, 10 times almost, 10 times to 100 times you can compare. The frequency bandwidth also you can just see that. So larger is the accelerometer, lower frequency you can easily measure, and then the lower is the weight, higher frequency bandwidth you can measure it. The general purpose, medium weight and sensitivity, small, light and high frequency, one can utilize these accelerometers. Remember the frequency range. So each accelerometer, as you have seen, it has got a preloaded mass. Okay, it has got a preloaded mass in the accelerometer. Okay, just to show you here, I think. Yes. So here, if you observe here, there is a preloaded mass here inside. Okay. So the spring and preloaded mass is there. So this preloaded mass will try to act as a single degree of freedom system here, and it will be acting as a resonance for that. That's why each accelerometer has got a resonance. Okay, that's why the useful range, typically, you may have to use only this one. You should not go in this zone, because suppose you are using on some shaft, let us say, on some rotary shaft bearing housing somewhere here. Okay. By chance, if the frequency of thing is around 20 kilohertz, and this is also 20 kilohertz there. So what happens is the moment you go to 20 kilohertz, you will get a large amplitude from the output from the accelerometer itself. But you may get confused with that, no, structure is vibrating at 20 kilo, that is the resonance. No, it is not that. The accelerometer itself has got its own resonance, so you will get completely confused. That's why the sensors, whenever you are using, be sure that what is its natural frequency, because the natural frequency comes because you have a sensor which has got a preloaded disk here inside. The preloaded disk is put in the compression accelerometer is to avoid the chattering of the piezo crystal. And that's why you will get a DC bias because of this. Remember that DC bias is because of the preloaded piezo crystal mass inside that. Okay, so always use the frequency bandwidth which is not in the vicinity of the accelerometer resonance. Each accelerometer comes with a natural frequency, its own natural frequency. So don't operate in this one. So you should stop, when there is a flat. This is a place where the accelerometer will not influence in the structural vibration. The moment you start here, suppose you are using here, the structural vibrations will get influenced with the vibration of the accelerometer itself. So that's the reason why this particular zone is not recommended. So let us say you may use up to 5 kilohertz. Okay, that is the best place to use it. You can use that only. Now, as I told you, the frequency range and the sensitivity. The smaller is the accelerometer, sensitivity is lower, weight is lesser, frequency is higher. So whereas the bigger is the accelerometer, higher is the sensitivity, and you have a lower is the frequency band. So this is very important to note down. Okay. Next comes how to mount the accelerometer. So the accelerometer can be mounted with a variety of ways. One can use a beeswax if it is in a laboratory and less than 40 degrees centigrade. And moderate temperature double adhesive tapes also can be used. But when the temperature is quite high, and then when you are using a lot of sensors, it is better to use these threaded studs. Okay, and sometimes you can use a magnet also. But if the vibration is quite severe, it is better to use these stud ones. Okay, so it's got the stud ones. So use the stud mounting such that it doesn't come out and fall off there. So please note that this is the natural frequency of the accelerometer itself. Don't go beyond this 5 kilohertz. Okay. So this is again and again I am telling, because you have to use only in the operating zone. This is a safe zone. The moment you cross here, your data will get corrupted by the accelerometer itself. Structure is vibrating, and in above that one, the accelerometer will give a corruption, okay, to the signal. That's why try to use only in the safer zone. So these are the another few things where you can use a magnet, you can use the handheld also, but this is very rarely used for the very sensitive measurements. You can use the accelerometer using a mechanical filter, which are used for some shocks. Okay, so you got this is a mechanical filter. So these are used typically for to avoiding the shocks. Okay. And then this one has to be clearly noted, because the mounting of the accelerometer is so crucial, especially in the rotary systems. There are a lot of local positions and global positions. Okay. See, global positions are the ones wherein the structure vibrates in the solid system behavior. In the local, in the sense, there are very sheet metal work, something like this. Let us say that you have covered this bearing housing side by to avoid the leakage of the grease, etc. Do not put on those things there. And also, if you give a wrong reading for you, you should put either in the bearing housing properly or on the shaft where it ends, such that you get a system response. Should not get a local one. So this is very, very important. Tries to understand, and ensure that whenever you are using on a surface, you use an adhesive such that don't if we just don't cover up only some 50% of the thing. It should be completely stuck to the structure. Don't say that I will put a small one drop of Fevikwik and then put it there. It is not correct. So you should spread the accelerometer across the surface such that it will pick up the vibrations properly. So if you put at this local locations, you start chattering and then creating the problem. And ensure that the mass of the accelerometer is 1/10 of the mass of the structure. This is always better to use this. Okay, this is what I was telling you, around 500 grams accelerometer, which we have used for the tall chimney of 205 meters. It has got 1,000 picocoulomb per meter square, meter per second square, and then this one you see, which we used for the purpose of our spark plug. It is 0.65 grams and then 0.1 picocoulomb. Okay, you can just see that the gain here. This is 10,000 times higher sensitivity wise. 10,000 times higher than this small one. Okay, the weight wise also you see this 0.65, this is 470. Okay, so this is where you should ensure that which structure you are doing the experiment and how to do it. And here also you can just see that typical thumb rule is that whenever you are doing experiment, don't try to exceed the weight of the sensor greater than 1/10 of the structure, means 10%. Restrict it to 10%. Some accelerometer has got a transfer sensitivity, because since the piezo crystal is a continuous material and it has got a transfer sensitivity, maximum transfer sensitivity should be less than 4%. You can ensure that one, and then while utilizing that, ensure that if at all you get some signals across the transfers thing there, you can compare with 100% signal from the uniaxial thing what you are supposed to do the experimentation. And another important thing we should note down is the triboelectric noise. So don't confuse with this tribology. This is actually something to do with a cable induced noise. So whenever using the accelerometer, try to stick the accelerometer properly to the surface such that it doesn't chatter and it doesn't give you the vibration signals. Otherwise, what happens is when you try to put in this manner, whenever the structure is vibrating, so it will generate these charges, because charges are going here. Okay, these two charges are going. It will induce a differential voltage and then a lot of noise in your signals. That's why this triboelectric noise should be avoided with a proper cable conducting there. Environmental effects: humidity, acoustic noise, magnetic field, nuclear radiation, away from the corrosion substances, and try to ensure that the structure whichever is bending, it doesn't try have too much of a base strain. Okay, you should place in such a that where structure don't have too much of a curvature. Okay, so otherwise the structure accelerometer will get affected. And another last important thing we should note down here is the calibration of the accelerometer. See, we do a lot of experimentation in the research, in the industrial application. First question comes: how are you sure that your accelerometer is giving correct results as far as the vibration frequency is concerned and the amplitude is concerned? It's a big question and a very important question. So that's why you need to calibrate the accelerometers and force transducer in a regular basis. So both the things, in terms of sensitivity you have to check, in terms of the frequency response also you have to check it. So for that you have a handheld calibrators, which will tell you the, suppose I give 1G, this is a small exciter, so I should be able to get 1G output. Okay. So that is what is the checking. Another one is back-to-back calibration on electrodynamic shaker. One is the standard accelerometer, and you see whether the accelerometer response is how is the response across the frequency bandwidth. So this is where you will come to know the resonance of the accelerometer itself. When you sweep the frequency and electrodynamic shaker with a reference thing, you can get the accelerometer response as well as its amplitude as far as sensitivity is concerned there. So each accelerometer the manufacturer will give a sensitivity chart. You note down this one. So this sensitivity chart has to put into the preamplifier setting. Then only, if I give 1G, you give 1G output. Otherwise, what happens is this number, if you don't set in for that accelerometer, you may get 0.9G or you may get 1.1G. So that's why each accelerometer you have to set this sensitivity number. Okay, so that's how the important things are there in that. So back-to-back accelerometer calibration, you have a reference standard accelerometer and you have accelerometer to be calibrated. So then what you can do is you can sweep the frequency and then find out whether the accelerometer calibrating is good or bad, frequency versus amplitude. Now coming to the important aspect, I told you that conditioning amplifier, pre-amplifier. So it essentially, after the accelerometer, you have a pre-amplifier. So this pre-amplifier, I think you might have seen earlier, but I have shown you. Okay, so it has got a pre-amplifier. I'll show you the pre-amplifier. Yes, so you have a pre-amplifier here. Yes, so this pre-amplifier. Yeah, these are the preamplifiers. So as I have shown you, these preamplifiers are basically the units which are used. Preamplifiers are used low signal noise level, high impedance. These are the typically characteristic of these signals that are coming out of the thing. So once you send it to the thing there, the signal will get amplified and impedance will get reduced. It will be in terms of something like giga ohms. It will get reduced into kilo ohms. Okay, such that you can connect it to the data ecosystem as well as the some of the oscilloscopes, and then you can use the filters, high pass filter, low pass filter, to get rid of the noise. That's how the function of the preamplifier. So the cost of this may be 20K and this cost of this may be around 40K. So these are the the cost implications of that. So now we'll quickly touch upon the signal processing for 5 minutes, and then we will allow for 5 minutes to 10 minutes questioning here. So whenever you get the signals from the accelerometer then to the preamplifier, typically you will be encountering these problems called as aliasing, leakage, and then the noise. Okay, let us try to understand. So aliasing is the situations wherein you sample at a rate which is lesser than the frequency of interest. For example, so you are sampling, if you are interested in 100 hertz, you typically should 256 hertz sampling rate should be. So suppose you do a sampling lesser than 100, what happens is a frequency which is having a high frequency will appear as a low frequency. Okay, so strictly speaking, the number of samples should have been more. Okay, so but now you have taken only less number of samples, so ideal way would have been one here. Okay, so here you see so many samples would have been better, such that you will get a correct signal. But unfortunately, if your sampling rate is lesser than the Nyquist criteria, then a high frequency signal will appear as low frequency, as you see here. Okay, to avoid this one, it is better to sample at 2.56 times the interested frequency. Suppose you are conducting an experiment up to, let us say, 100 hertz, you sample at minimum 256 sampling rate. Okay, by that way you can use this effect of aliasing problems. Next is the leakage problem. This leakage is essentially happens due to the data equation. See, what happens is when you start acquiring the data, ideally is, so you say start and stop. Okay, so you have captured the signal. But unfortunately, what happens is when you are doing the experimentation and data ecosystem, it is not in your control. You enter the control stop button, it will come and stop here. It is impossible to stop here. So what happens is, you know, you have a half signal here. So because of this half signal, you have seen a Fourier series is a Fourier's integral Fourier transform of a pure sine wave is one single. But the same thing, if there is a half sine wave, you know, Fourier constants, Fourier coefficients, it will show various neighboring frequencies also, because it doesn't know whether it will get completed here or it will get completed here. So it's a part of a signal there. So that is the reason wherein, so you have this leakage problem. So leakage problem is a serious problem in all the data IQ systems. That's why we have to use this windowing technique. So the abrupt start and abrupt end can be trimmed using this windowing technique. Otherwise, you know, the signal will get leakage. See, this is the leakage. This leakage is because this is the half sine wave. This is the half sine wave. That's why it has leaked in the neighboring thing. Considering it as a major frequency thing, it has leaked out of the neighborhood. To avoid that one, use the windowing technique. So in the windowing, we have varieties of things. We have flat top window, hanging window, rectangular window, etc. We will not go in deep into the thing, but using the windowing techniques, one can avoid this leakage problem due to the truncation of the acquired data. Okay, so with that, I think I will complete my presentation. So I will try to leave some 5 to 10 minutes for a few questions if you have anything there.
Thank you, sir. Audience participants, please can raise your question so that answer can answer.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, please tell me. Yeah.
Sir, when do we use the Hanning window and the other types of windowing? This one, sir.
Okay. So typically, the Hanning window is used for the signals which are harmonic in nature. So typically, the sine, cosine, etc. And rectangular window is for the impulse hammers, the pulse excitation. And this flat top and Kessler things can be used for the random excitation signals. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have one more doubt, sir.
Yeah, please tell me.
As you said, we have to know the natural frequency of accelerometer also before conducting the experimentation.
Yes,
So,
yes.
will that be provided by the manufacturer, or we have to do any other test to find the accelerometer?
No. See here, if you observe this sheet is given, no, whatever here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In continuation of that, he will give one more chart. That chart will be having a graph like this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So from that you can decide.
Okay, sir. Sir, then how to decide the sensitivity of the accelerometer based on the experiments, sir? That means if we are conducting on a rotating machine,
Yes.
For academic purpose, not for industrial purpose. If we say for an academic purpose, if I have a vibration test rig,
Okay.
so then how to find out how to actually select the sensitivity of the accelerometer there?
Okay. So typically, for the laboratory purpose, so you have a so here. Okay. The general purpose accelerometer, as you have seen here, no? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
These are quite good enough for the laboratory purpose. And for the field and all, you have this triaxial and then high sensitivity ones. And the miniature one are for the MEMS device, small structures, etc. You can use it. So general purpose accelerometers are available for the lab purpose and medium structures.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Yeah, please tell me.
What kind of softwares are normally used for balancing the rotating machinery, sir?
Okay. See, you have this Brentley software is available.
Okay.
Who has done this rotary systems, etc. There. But however, one can do our MATLAB programming by knowing the the signals from the bearing housings. You can do a balancing also, static balancing, dynamic balancing. So you can write your own program to do a unbalanced mass, how much, etc. is there. It is possible to do it. Otherwise, industrially, there are softwares available from the Bentley.
Okay, sir. Sir, is there any specific procedure for balancing turbine rotors, sir?
Yeah, see what happens is first you have to start with single plane balancing, and then subsequently go to the two plane balancing, and then you have to put the cascading of the blades and do the turbine completely. There is a systematic procedure, one has to follow that.
Okay. Participants, you have any more doubts, please? Okay, if there is no question, means we will wind up the session. Before that, I thank Dr. S.B. Kandagal to handle this session very effective manner, so that today we have learned the different types of accelerometers and different types of shakers, and how to select the sensors for different applications, and he has shown some beautiful video to understand how the industrial peoples are doing the test. Here he has shown one video that there are a heavy mass to be kept on the machine. So these are the really great thing we have not seen so far anywhere. So really thank you, sir, for your wonderful video and the wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all the participants. Okay, have a nice time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.